Welcome to Fiery Discourse, your podcast or media featuring dragonesses, female dinosaurs, and other similar saurians and scalies. I'm your host, Ludmillanon, and with me are my hosts, Angron, Mathmachine, Stryker, and LuckyEevee. Today is our 6th episode, and we're discussing 1963's The Sword in the Stone. So, let's get things started.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, The Sword in the Stone is part of what is considered to be, at least informally amongst like Disney fans, film historians, that as part of Disney's Silver Age. I think that's kind of a misnomer because a lot of the movies made around this time were really just as good as the ones that were made in the classic era of Disney. Basically, this was actually the last Disney animated movie released during Walt Disney's lifetime. He lived throughout the entire production of The Jungle Book, but he passed away before it was actually theatrically released. So what's interesting about this is originally what had happened is this was originally pitched as a movie about Chanticleer. And what happened is that Walt Disney himself said he didn't understand it and decided to make a King Arthur movie instead. Ironically, the Chanticleer movie would get made some 30 years later as Rock-a-Doodle, made by Don Bluth. So that's actually where it got started. It got started from like a Disney pitch in the early 60s, and then 30 years later, Don Bluth basically goes and makes it. See, I don't know about you guys, if you guys, really watch this, but for me, this was my favorite Disney movie as a kid. I had like a lot of the Disney movies on VHS, but for some reason, this was the one I watched over and over on VHS. Every kid like has that one movie, they get fixated on, they just watch it over and over. This was that movie to me. So basically, I can recite this entire movie pretty much back to front at this point.
Yeah. What I also find interesting about the movie is actually, on the subject of the chickens and whatnot, one that honestly gets a little undersold is Lady Cluck, or whatever her name was.
Yeah, from Robin Hood. Robin Hood. That's another one of the
not that one. Not that one. Frick, what was her name? She had the big hat. She had the big bosom, except
that was a classic Disney character. Her name was Clara Cluck. She was
Clara Cluck. That's who I was thinking of.
Was from the she basically from the shorts era.
Yeah, and had a brief role in House of Mouse where Donald and her could have worked.
Right. I remember that short. That was a good one. House of Mouse in general was a fun one. Yeah, it really was done with a lot of love and a lot of care, and we are definitely going to talk about it on the podcast sometime, Mickey's House of Villains. That's probably going to be an episode because Dragoness Maleficent does show up, however briefly. But yeah, like I say, that really is another classic moment. And like I say, this era of Disney, I feel, kind of gets overlooked. And this movie in general, I feel like the problem was it was sandwiched in between 101 Dalmatians and The Jungle Book, both of which were monster critical and commercial hits for Disney.
Wait, now, what in The Jungle Book?
The Jungle Book was after this. 101 Dalmatians was before this.
Right
in the middle. But like I said, this movie actually did very good at the box office. It got pretty decent reviews, all things considered. But I feel like it gets overlooked, and I feel that especially with time, it definitely is one of the more overlooked. It's not like Black Cauldron or anything, but I feel like personally, for me, this movie could probably use a bit more like love and respect, basically, because as much as the Xerox method basically doesn't. Some people, were against it, including Walt Disney himself. He felt it looked cheap. But I feel like for this movie, it especially works out in its favor because it gives it, some kind of a fable, basically a viewpoint to it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it definitely does give it that sort of thing. I think what ultimately kind of peters it down a little bit is the fact that sometimes it can sometimes lose track of what it's ultimately trying to accomplish. I mean,
right.
To be fair, other films like The Menu have this problem, and I still love them all the same, but it's definitely what both works and doesn't work about the movie, if that makes any sense.
Right, right. Another thing I think that might kind of bring it down is the issue with Arthur's voice actor. What happened is
Yeah.
that Arthur's voice actor, his original one, was going through puberty at the time, so he couldn't finish all of his lines. So they had to get a replacement voice actor, and they switched between like the first voice and the second voice pretty much
Many
interchangeably, and
times.
it really can take you up. And
Yeah,
fun
I mean,
fact,
it didn't really distract me all that much. I honestly didn't fully notice
yeah,
that. To be
I never
honest.
noticed that. The only reason I know is that is 'cause I've seen it so many times. But like I say, one interesting fact is that his replacement voice actor would later voice Mowgli in the Jungle Book just a few years later, so he got a much bigger role there.
Nice.
And what's funny about the movie is they reused the same audio clip of like Arthur. Whoa, whoa, whoa! They reused that sound clip like I think 15 times in the movie. Like if you really watch it and you listen to it, it just keeps repeating that like audio clip at various points in the movie. It's like
I think you're underselling it.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
It was actually 2 voice actors that replaced the original, and they were both the director's sons.
Right. Oh, 2 of them. Right. I didn't know that. I knew it was just. I knew that it was the director's son. What's his name? I think his name was Bruce Reitherman. He was Wolfgang Reitherman's son, and he did voice Mowgli in Jungle Book in 1967. So yeah. So yeah, like I say,
Richard and Robert.
Richard. Right. Where did I get the name Bruce? Oh, whatever. But anyway,
Bruce.
I know. Okay, but anyway, yeah. Like I say, this definitely is an interesting take on the King Arthur legends in that, in that it really only focuses on what really is a brief part of like the King Arthur myths. Now, I have not read the Once and Future King, which this is based on, but I did read a lot of King Arthur myths as a kid, like, Gawain and the Green Knight, Tristan and Isolde, Mordred, all that stuff. So
I think Overly Sarcastic Productions also did a pretty interesting summary about this. Their channel's really amazing too. They do a bunch of like history summarized and whatnot, and it's amazing. The style's really cute too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think
I've heard of them. I think I've seen their videos.
While I didn't watch this movie very much as a kid, it's what got me interested in the King Arthur legend.
Oh, it's a great introduction, I feel, to, the things of the King Arthur myths. I feel like this movie is the perfect gateway for that. It definitely was mine, into actually, finding the books and reading about it and stuff like that. So yeah, basically what's interesting too about this is even though, of course, the movie is supposedly about, King Arthur, the real star of the movie is Merlin. And that's because he is such a fun character. Like, I hear the name Merlin. I'm not thinking of like Sam Neill or like the version from like the BBC series or whatever. I'm thinking of this version when I like read the, King Arthur stories or even just hear the name Merlin. The first thing that comes into mind is the version from this movie. He really is such a fun, well-written, well-voice-acted character. He was also supposedly based a little bit on Walt Disney himself, according to Bill Peet, who was the director of the movie.
Nice.
Not director, but animation director, I should say. But yeah, like I said, Merlin definitely steals the show, I feel, and he really is just such a great character. And I think the reason because of that, it's actually in some foreign countries, like here in Spain, the movie is actually called Merlin the Sorcerer, not The Sword and the Stone. So the international titles are like, up front, this is a Merlin movie, not really a King Arthur movie, if that makes any sense.
Talk about false advertising.
Yeah, exactly. But
by the way, I posted the King Arthur thing by OSP in the designated chat, so definitely give it a watch when you got the time.
Oh, I definitely will. Thanks for that. But yeah, of course, we can't have Merlin without Archimedes, who definitely is a great comedic foil. He is a little bit kind of. I wonder if because it was made around the same time. Excuse me, a little bit like Owl from Winnie the Pooh, because that was actually being made around the same time. I think, like Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree and that, and the Blustery Day. So.
I mean, there's also Friend Owl and what was that other? Oh yeah, Big Mama. Holy crap, that one.
Yeah, well, that was a couple years later, but yeah,
yeah.
also the owl from A Sleeping Beauty. Let's not forget that one. That
Oh,
actually might be where they got the character design from when you think about it. But
absolutely,
that's what I think happened. Sorry.
The irony that you say that he's a bit like Owl, he was actually voiced by Rabbit.
Oh, awesome. I love that. I love when you find out stuff like that because Disney really is like a knot of voice actors, and that if one of them is in one movie and you look up their credits, chances are they did like 5 or 6 more. At least that was the way back in the thing. But like I say, it really that is awesome.
And fun little bit of trivia. The voice actors for Merlin and Archimedes were originally supposed to be flipped.
Oh.
They were originally supposed to be each other, but they found that they actually worked better when they flipped the roles because the voice actor for Archimedes had a much more sarcastic, dry wit, and the voice actor for Merlin had this...
Had a little more whimsy?
more whimsy, more fatherly kind of mentor figure voice. So they decided, okay, you're better at these roles than you are at the original roles we cast you for.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. I can't see it being the other way, to be honest. I feel like that actually might have hurt the movie if they went with the original way. I'm really glad they changed it in that case because the voice acting in this, at least for them, is just perfect.
Same.
Yep. Agreed.
So yeah, normally, of course, we talk about dragonesses and dragoness transformations and, female dinosaurs, but this movie in general has a lot of transformation. This might be one of the largest, transformation media-based thing because, of course, Arthur and Merlin become fish. They become, squirrels,
birds, in Arthur's case.
Right. Of course, the bird scene too, and that's where we meet Madam Mim. But we'll get to her in just a little bit. But yeah, the musical numbers, of course, are really good. They're written by the Sherman Brothers, I believe, and of course, like I say, Higgitus Figgitus, that alone is just. It's great, and I feel like people sleep on it, but it really, really is good. But getting back to the transformations for a second, I really like how it keeps their characteristics, basically. How they actually manage to pull that off, make them into different forms while still being recognizably them. Like with, for example, the color schemes and like the tufts of hair and stuff. It really, really is well done. And of course, the one scene that is surprisingly popular on the internet is the squirrel sequence. Now, I remember reading a fan theory. This is a crazy, crazy fan theory. Just going on a little tangent here. That, Merlin turns the female squirrel human. And she becomes Guinevere from the stories. I don't know. I don't remember where I read it, but that is probably one of the craziest fan theories I read. When I read it, it was like...
I'm sorry, what? Who becomes Guinevere?
The female squirrel from the scene with Arthur turns into a squirrel and he meets the one who falls in love with him in that. I remember reading like a fan theory where she becomes Guinevere from the stories. Now it is probably one of the craziest fandom theories out there, and I certainly did not come up with it or anything. But just wow. It really goes to
get on that shit.
I know.
Matt Pat should really look into this.
Yeah, he really should.
The reason it exists is because that scene just went way harder than it had any right to.
Oh, it definitely did.
And people are like wanting to find a happy ending for her.
Of course. Yeah. Well, Disney in general really went hard back then, a lot of that stuff. Like, even like when people say, oh, they softened up in the 50s, they still went pretty hard. Harder than they would today in some aspects, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, heck, even the Renaissance has some pretty low-hitting points.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, and even more. And also, do you all remember the Jungle Book? Like... Oh, seriously, they tied a freaking flaming thing to Shere Khan's tail, and it's like, dude, that is brutal.
Oh, it definitely is. But yeah, like I say, I believe the wolf shows up in that scene, and it's actually the animation is actually not just the animation, but also the character design was reused from the earlier short Lambert the Sheepish Lion. One thing about Disney in the Silver Age, which is generally considered to be from 101 Dalmatians until The Fox and the Hound, is that they reused a lot of stuff. It's probably the most notable in Robin Hood, where they actually took like sequences from Snow White and they just drew Maid Marian over it, basically. But it's still a fantastic movie. But you can notice like the little animation shortcuts if you have like keen eyes like that.
Mm-hmm. And I certainly do, for the most part.
I've seen a lot of that too. So
in this one, they did that actually a couple times, even with its own self. One where Sir Ector is wagging his finger at the camera. He does that like 3 different times.
Right. Yeah, I remember that. Also the part with the K, I think like eating the chicken bone or eating like the chicken drumstick. That's actually a reused thing. If you look closely, they cut away and then they cut right back to it, and it's actually the same animation reused.
Yep.
So yeah, like I say, the thing that's interesting about this movie too is, of course, later on when Arthur basically gets his chance to be a squire for Kay and Sir Ector, that Merlin just gets so angry at him. It seems abrupt, but it also is kind of in character because he feels like I think he's squandering his potential. But in a way, that brings me to my next point, which is that Merlin in the Arthur stories and possibly this movie, if the ending quote is any indication, can see into the future. So maybe this was kind of like a test sort of thing. What do you guys think?
There is a possibility of that because the way that Merlin saw into the future was he saw vagaries of the future, besides the fact that he went to the future himself. Because he knew that someone was coming, but he didn't know who in the beginning of the movie. And throughout the whole movie, he does not know that Arthur is going to be King of England. He just knows that he's going to be someone important.
Right.
There's a
you
chance
see like
that
flashes of it.
Precognition.
This was a test, but there's also a chance that he thought that this was the kid diverting from the future, that he was going to be something important as well.
Right, but he ended up being proven wrong because he pulls the Excalibur out of the stone, which really is such a beautiful moment. The way it's framed, the way it's basically the music swells up in that and sparkles. It really is just such a beautiful yet understated moment.
Okay. Actually, on that note, I kind of want to shit on it a little bit because
you're ahead. We're open to all opinions here.
We are. Indeed.
That sword in particular isn't Excalibur. Hear me out. The real Excalibur was actually got from the Lady of the Lake. That is just a sword that was put in the stone by Merlin.
That could very well be. I did not consider that before. Wow. This is actually making me rethink it. Hold on, because like I say, he meets the Lady of the Lake after he becomes king, correct? So that would take place after the events of this movie. So, wow, you actually might be right. For the longest time, I and a lot of people, think it's Excalibur, but wow, I never even considered that before. You, my friend, have completely blown my perception.
Yep.
Someone should tell a lot of these AAA games.
There was a lot of things I liked about school. History was one of them. Mainly because it was the easiest to memorize for tests and whatnot.
Same here. I loved history. That definitely was my favorite subject. That and English, because I do creative writing and just do whatever. That was great.
I feel ya.
Someone should tell a lot of these AAA game companies about that, because they're doing a lot of references to Excalibur these days, and just the sword and the stone.
Right. Well, even that's true too. Because we're not the only ones making that mistake. There's a lot of people that are. But like I say, getting back, Mathmachine said, Merlin going back, Merlin coming back from the future. The whole, blow me to Bermuda bit was actually in the book. I remember reading that. The tourist outfit wasn't, but I feel that is the funniest joke in the movie. That Arthur's trying to escape the castle. Every time he opens the door, it's "Hail Arthur! Hail our true king!" And then the door opens up and Merlin comes and he's dressed like a Hawaiian suited tourist. That is just so funny.
Yeah, it's pretty hip. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, no.
For its time period as well.
Makes you wonder if like Master Roshi got inspiration from this, you know?
Master Roshi!
Oh well, maybe it could, but like,
Possible.
Toriyama is a very
man,
well noted
that would be crazy
American
if
media
like,
lover, so it is
Toriyama
possible.
came out and said Roshi was inspired by Merlin, which could be cool if it really was.
Very, very could be.
Oh man.
All right. So yeah, now Sir Ector and Kay are decent enough antagonists, but there's another antagonist that there's another antagonist that we are going to talk about right now, and that is Madam Mim. Now, she actually appears for a very short time in the movie. I believe less than maybe around like 20 minutes of screen time total, but she makes the most of it. I mean, from like the moment she's on screen, it is just so she is such a well-written, well-animated, well-voice-acted character. And for the longest time, I thought she was voiced by June Foray, the actress who played, the grandmother in Looney Tunes, Rocky the Flying Squirrel, Witch Hazel from Looney Tunes, and Witch Hazel from Disney. They had two evil witches called Witch Hazel, voiced by the same woman from two different companies.
Holy
But yeah, it turns out it's not June Foray. And that was a very big shock to me when I looked up and I found that out, because I always was under that assumption.
Well, what do you know?
Yeah, I know, exactly. But yeah, like I say, I love how like taunting she is with Arthur on that, how she basically is almost like, well, of course she turns into a cat, but it's like it's a cat toying with the prey and that. And like I say, just the way it's done is so really creative, I feel. They really took the idea of the character and really improved it. And of course, she is the cause of one of my favorite pieces of animation, probably of all time, I'm going to be honest. And I know that's, giving it probably higher praise than it deserves, but I love the Wizard Duel. That is probably one of my favorite pieces of animation, period. And like any film ever is the Wizard's Duel, because
it's no Black Clover or Fairy Tale or
no,
I don't know. I'm lowballing here. Freaking Magica or
right. But
yeah, it's pretty wild. Not gonna lie. It's filled with transformations. Let's be fair.
Yeah, that too. That
or even Little Witch Academia.
Boosted up in my thing.
Sorry, what, Stryker?
Little Witch Academia. I was thinking.
I haven't seen that yet.
Same here.
Good series. You should.
Okay.
I definitely will keep that in mind. But yeah, one thing that's funny is like when I watched Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and Snape was like, "Now we are going to do a wizard's duel." I was like, "Oh man, they're gonna turn to animals and attack each other." And it's like, no, they don't do that. They just shoot balls of light at each other. But, missed opportunity. The one in, the other movie is good. The one between Dumbledore and Voldemort. But I'm talking about the one in Chamber of Secrets. That is some lame stuff right there for a wizard's duel.
Yeah.
I will say the duels in Harry Potter can get pretty damn hectic sometimes,
Yeah,
I feel like there's ways you could have made them more visually interesting than them just shooting like beams of light at each other. Because, I mean, it's like, at that point, it's like, you have magic, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff, and yet you're just, shooting beams of light, do something a little more, creative. I mean, they do on sporadic occasions, but I feel like that's one of the weaknesses. But, getting back to this Wizard's Duel, I just love how creative they get with all the animal forms in that. And, of course, with the character animation of each one, how they move and how they all keep the characteristics, like Mim is pink and Merlin's blue. They all have Mim's wild hair and Merlin's, mustache and glasses. Sorry?
Beard. The beard.
The beard.
Oh, sorry for that. But yeah, no, I just love how they do that because it really is just so creative. And of course, I mean, Archimedes is right. Mim instantly cheats. Like, as soon as they do the paces, the first thing she does is cheat. And it really is just so fun. How it just escalates and builds up and builds up. It really just keeps you wondering what happens next. And fun fact, the elephant form was actually reused from a short called Goliath II and would later be reused, I believe, in the Jungle Book for Winifred, which is also Verna Felton's last role, if anyone's curious. But yeah, now it's time, after that, she turns to Rhino, she gets knocked off the cliff. She becomes a dragon. And it's definitely one of the more interesting ones because it's Disney kind of spoofing themselves, and that Mim's dragon form is kind of a spoof of Maleficent. It's a parody. They use like the same cliff setting. I believe they even use similar music, like sound-alike music, if not the same exact music cue.
Oh, wait. So back that up.
Yep.
So Goliath the Second, what cell was reused again?
Mim's elephant form, the design of it was basically reused from this short. They basically took it and they drew over it, and they drew, Mim's facial features on it.
I see. Gotcha.
Right. Now getting back to Mim's dragon form, is that, like I say, it's kind of a parody of Maleficent. It's Disney basically lightheartedly poking fun at itself, and it is a lot of fun. Let me tell you, you have her, screeching and that, breathing fire, the whole classic thing, but it's so over the top to where it's meant to be comedic, and I feel that it's one instance where it really does work and out into its favor.
Yeah. I mean, I'm personally not that big a Madam Mim fan, but yeah, I will admit the fight in general, as well as some of their clever uses of transformations, was certainly impressive to say the least.
I don't know, like I say, from an aesthetic standpoint, it's not the greatest, but it's not meant to be aesthetically pleasing, I feel. I feel like that's kind of missing the purpose if you're just picking from an aesthetic point of view. The point for this, at least, Dragoness and this, Dragoness form is the intent, and I feel on that front, it definitely sells it perfectly.
Yep.
It's also funny that, Merlin technically wins the wizard duel, by, in a way, sort of cheating because, is a germ technically an animal? I mean, it's alive, but...
Okay, for technicality's sake, I will say yes, because it falls within the 6 main biological things. Protozoa, fungi, antibacteria, Animalia, Plantae. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, right. I understand.
Also, he didn't turn invisible, so
no, he turned into a germ, and he got her sick, and that's how he won.
Yep.
But yeah, like I say, it is a lot of fun, though. It definitely is one of my, favorite pieces of animation, period. I just feel like how they do the characteristics and how they do the movements. I'm not saying, like the animation is, technically, beautiful, but just the way it's done, the way it flows, the way they do the different characteristics, it really is just such a fun time. It easily is the most iconic part of the movie, in my opinion. And for a lot of people, too.
And I just love the characterization of Mim herself. She is just...
Oh, she's amazing.
She is such an underrated Disney villain. I'm amazed that they don't use her in more stuff.
That's the thing. Sorry. Good.
She is just deliciously evil and just loves it. The way I've described her, especially in recent months, is she walked so characters like Jack Horner could run.
Oh, you can make a direct line from stuff like her to Jack Horner, basically, and that, it's definitely a type of villain that Disney had never really done before this. When you think about all the villains, for the most part, okay, you had guys like Captain Hook who were somewhat goofy, but still serious, legitimate threats. And she is as well, but she has a little bit of an edge to her. I feel that really just pushes her along. And, like I say, it's funny you said that about, people using her. She is very popular in, like, the Netherlands and in Italian Donald Duck comics. I don't know if Carl and Don Rosa and that. Madam Mim has made several appearances in those foreign European Disney comics.
Holy crap. Really?
Nice.
Yeah.
Probably buy...
She's a reoccurring character in them.
Oh, damn.
Wizards of Mickey series, then.
Yeah, definitely. And what's interesting, she actually had a much larger part in one of the original scripts. I remember reading this. She actually was going to be more like, she was still going to be herself, but she was also going to be kind of more like a Morgana Le Fay type of persona. She was going to have, like, the Black Knight, the one who in the final cut of the movie just has, like, 1 or 2 lines. basically he was going to be her servant, and he was actually going to try and find Arthur to try and stop him from being King of England, that kind of thing. I remember that it was considered, but I think cut out for, I don't know, maybe time constraints. I'm kind of glad they did, actually, because I feel like this version of her, where she's just, she doesn't have an ulterior motive, she's just there to cause chaos and basically, do whatever the hell she wants. That, I feel, is a much more compelling character than like a generic evil witch or something.
Yep. That's what really makes Mim work, is she has no motivation, she has no plan, she has no desire.
She has no alliance, she has nothing.
Because it's fun.
She's it's just, in a way you could say it's madness. Like the Joker. It's like the Joker, some men just want to watch the world burn. It's kind of like that if you want to get right down to it.
Oh yeah, she's 100% the Joker, but a little more loony and a little more magic.
Yeah, and definitely not as homicidal. Still homicidal, but not as homicidal.
Oh yeah, not as homicidal as some of the shit Joker's done. Let's be fair. The comics do not paint him in a very great light sometimes.
Of course. But yeah, the interesting thing about this is that, of course, Disney did all of their direct-to-video sequels and that. They did, like, TV follow-ups. This was one of the movies that never got anything. It was, like, one and done. There wasn't even anything considered. And that, to me, is interesting because I feel like you could have followed up on this. But on the other hand, this is perfect the way it is. It ends perfectly. It wraps itself up nicely. And I feel like it really is a lot of fun. This movie is... It really, I think, shows the difference between Disney then and Disney now. I mean, Disney now still makes some very good work, like, Encanto and stuff like that, but it feels like they don't know how to make just loose, freewheeling, fun movies like this. That, it doesn't have, like, a big message or, like, a grandiose, overinflated of itself or anything. It just is there to have a good time and entertain you and stuff like that. And I feel like that's something that Disney really should try to go back to.
Mm-hmm.
No, they have to stroke their ego these days, so.
Exactly. Everything has to be like some grandiose adventure or like some big, message movie or something. It's like, you can't just have a movie be a movie, have like, have a little moral in it, but also just be like a fun ride. And I felt that way a lot about the Silver Age, like with Robin Hood especially, and that's going to tie into our question of the week, which is, which Disney movie is your favorite from the Silver Age? Now, the Silver Age is going to be defined as 101 Dalmatians to the Fox and the Hound. The Black Cauldron is actually considered to be believe it or not, to be the Bronze Age. That's basically Black Cauldron, Great Mouse Detective, and Oliver and Company. I don't know why. See. That's just what some people on the internet say. I don't buy any of this at all. To me, the Disney animated canon, all of it is good.
So from 101 Dalmatians to Fox and the Hound. Got it. Okay.
Right. I'll go first. I'll say my personal favorite, as much as I love this, and I love Aristocats, and Rescuers is a fun time too. My favorite is definitely 150% Robin Hood. God, there's just some. I know it's definitely it's technically probably the weakest of them because they do all that reusing of the animation and such. And believe it or not, Don Bluth actually worked on it, and he apparently did not enjoy working on it, sadly. But I just feel like, I don't know, it really is just so much fun. It's a movie that you could just watch again, like Sword and Stone. You could watch this movie again and again and again, and it is just such an amazing time. The characters are all instantly iconic. It's like, people are still trying to make Robin Hood movies, like the one with, oh God, what was it? The one with Russell Crowe, and then you had the one made a couple of years ago, and it's like, why are you even trying? Disney did it perfectly. Even like the Kevin Costner one, it's like, Disney did it perfectly. What are you doing here? But it really.
I also like the one with Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the one with Kevin Costner, Prince of Thieves.
Nice. Oh boy, I will say this. I do in fact have like a top 5.
Ooh, go ahead.
5 would have to be Aristocats. 4 would have to be 101 Dalmatians. 3 would have to be Jungle. Oh wait, actually, 4 is Jungle Book. 3 is 101 Dalmatians. 2 is The Fox and the Hound, and number 1 would 100% have to be Robin Hood. It's fun. It's pretty much all you said applies to that. I really don't mind the reused animation because it gets across that it's fun, still trying to be fun,
Yeah,
and
the reused animation.
yeah,
doesn't bother
like
me.
it's really rewatchable, and it's one of my favorite classic Disney films. Period. Like, don't get me wrong, I really enjoy the Aristocats. It's nostalgic for a reason, but like something else about Robin Hood, man.
Exactly.
Also, there's a YTP made by whatever his name was. That's really enjoyable.
Oh, I think I remember that. Yeah, it was
Friars rubbing wood.
Yes.
exactly something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like-
that was a hilarious one too. One of the
Yeah,
best.
it has a cohesive story, and you know what the weird thing is? Like, it doesn't demoralize Robin Hood, but it actually makes freaking Prince John, of all people, more competent. If that makes any sense. Like, he's actually a pretty straightforward ruler. He addresses a problem like Friar Tuck, and like actually takes action. Like, he's being an actual ruler. It's pretty wild, not gonna lie.
What's your favorite Mathmachine? What'd you say? But from between 101 Dalmatians and Fox and the Hound, what would you say is your favorite of the Disney Silver Age, basically?
I forgot to mention Pete's Dragon and Bedknobs and Broomsticks. Also, Mary Poppins. Don't forget those.
Right. I don't know if those are considered part of the animated canon, although they're all fantastic movies too.
Okay, yeah. In any case, Math, you have the floor.
I'm gonna make it 3 for 3.
Nice.
Absolutely, Robin Hood. That was just my favorite as a kid from this era of Disney, like bar none. Just the adventure style that it was great. The animation worked really well with this, and I love the character designs for all of the characters.
Oh, that's
Okay. Stryker.
Oh, it's absolutely Robin Hood. Like, I grew up watching this movie when I was a kid, and years later I bought it on Blu-ray, and I just watched again, and I remembered why I love this movie so much.
Mm-hmm.
And despite all the reused animation and all of its flaws, what the hell? It's based on one of my favorite characters from folklore and myth. You know?
Oh yeah.
Exactly. Okay, and LuckyEevee, what would you have to say?
I wasn't really exposed to like any of the Silver Age movies.
I see.
Like, I didn't grow up with Disney like at all.
So what? So, but out of all of the 60s stuff that we talked about, what would you say would be the movie that would most interest you to like go and watch it?
I don't know.
That's all right. Okay. All right. So, and now it is time for the patent pending Dragoness Scale, where we rank them. And this time, of course, we are going to rank Madam Mim. And I will give her probably the lowest score I have given a Dragoness yet. I'm going to give her a 7 out of 10. And I think the reason for that is that aesthetically, I can't give her anything higher because she's meant to look, goofy and, silly and that. Well, not too comical, like, not like overly cartoonish, but she's not meant to be like, overly fearsome like Maleficent. But I feel like for the intent they had of the character and basically for how it ties in basically as basically the end point of the wizard's duel, basically like the final obstacle of it, and just the fact that it really is well done in general and it's a parody of Maleficent herself, I would have to give it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I will give it something lower.
Oh.
I will have to say the highest she deserves is a 5 out of 10.
Wow, that's the lowest score on this scale yet.
Now, don't get me wrong. She's a pretty solid foil. She's a solid character. She's a pretty impressive villain. And the magic duel, again, gives her mad brownie points. So maybe I'll think about raising it to a 6 out of 10. But what holds her back for me is that, again, not really a big Madam Mim fan. Like, there are way better villainesses out there. She is not among the worst, but she doesn't really do much for me. Second, her Dragoness, if we're judging based on her Dragoness form, it doesn't really appear all that much. It's like her, but it's a lot shorter. Like about 5 minutes tops, I want to say. Or maybe 10. But yeah. And also, she doesn't exhibit any of the Dragoness traits, so to speak. Like, granted, she does breathe fire, she does do that stuff, but she's more in control, and again, it's brief, but she doesn't really take full advantage of the dragon form, if you get what I mean. And thirdly, it's gonna be a little rough for me to say this, but Sword in the Stone, it's a good movie, but I can't really say it's one of my favorites. So that's also what keeps it down. She's not a bad character, but I will say this. I wish she could have been just a little more better.
Right. Okay, Mathmachine, what would you give her?
Are we basing this off the character in her entirety or just the Dragoness form?
Both.
Well, let's say both. Yeah.
Both are good.
Because this is going to be two vastly different things then. If we're going as the character as a whole, like I said, love Mim. I think that she is so underused by Disney. I think that she is just a great inspiration for a lot of villains that we're now starting to see come about. I can't believe it took that long for us to get more just evil for the sake of evil villains.
Yes.
As a character overall, she's like a 9 or a 10. When we're talking about the Dragoness, though, 5. I just
if we're finding middle ground on that, that's pretty much a 7 out of 10.
All right. I'll mark it as a 5 out of 10 with 9 out of 10 in the brackets on the scale.
Yeah,
okay.
Just the Dragoness form just does not click with me. If Don Bluth watched this and was inspired by this to make Singe, I can absolutely see the line between this and Singe, but it just, there's something about it that just does not look appealing, and I just don't know what it is exactly.
Yeah, I feel ya.
All right.
What about you, Stryker?
I barely remember the character. I think I'm gonna have to get back to you on the scale.
All right, that's okay. You can always tell us next week or the week after, and we'll just leave it as
watching it tonight. So.
Oh, okay,
Sweet.
awesome. So definitely get back to us with what it'll be for next week's episode. Then, all right. So right now we'll just leave it blank. And LuckyEevee, what would you give her?
5 out of 10 for previously stated reasons.
Okay, all right.
Nice.
So that means Mim is currently the lowest scoring Dragoness, but that's definitely not anything bad, of course. All right, and I think that just about does it for this episode. If you have any questions or you want to engage in a wizard's duel, you can email us at fierydiscourse@outlook.com or visit us on Twitter at twitter.com/fierydiscourse. Next time is going to be a 2-for-1, as we're going to be talking about the 2011 short film Reversal of the Heart and the 2016 short film Dragon in Distress. We're going to talk about 2 Dragonesses in one episode because it's the same basic concept. You know, a princess gets cursed by a name. Basically, a princess gets cursed to turn into a dragon. But they both go about it in 2 very different ways, which I feel is very interesting how we can compare and contrast them. But until then, this has been Fiery Discourse. Thank you so much for listening. And until next week, take care.
And if any of you want to do that wizard duel, just be sure not to go up against Asa. He's kind of a loose cannon in terms of like non-magic. Just Peace.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. And until then, see you next week.
Peace.
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 Adios.